بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم ربنا أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم أرنا حقائق الأشياء كما هي ربنا زدنا علما وعملا وإخلاصا يا رب العالمين. اللهم انصر أولياءك وجندك في غزة وفي فلسطين كلها وفي اليمن وفي لبنان وفي إيران وفي مشارق الأرض ومغاربها. اللهم انصرهم على عدوك وعدوهم إنك على كل شيء قدير. اللهم فرج عنا عن إخواننا في غزة وفي فلسطين كلها وفي اليمن وفي لبنان وفي إيران وفي أفغانستان وفي السودان وفي ليبيا وفي الهند وفي الصين. اللهم نفس كربنا وكربهم وثبت أقدامنا وأقدامهم والطف بنا وبهم يا أرحم الراحمين يا رب العالمين. وصل وسلم على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. آمين آمين يا رب. Okay, so this is a book review of Facticity and Fate of Reason after Kant, a book which I haven't read yet. It's Oxford University Press. To preserve the unrestricted authority of reason in moral sphere, Kant argued that the scientific use of reason yields knowledge of appearance only, not of thing as they are. This seems misleading to me because it sounds like the purpose of Kant was to, he does say something similar in his preface to his critique of pure reason, but it would be, I think, too hasty, if not misleading, to say that this sounds very instrumental. So that was his purpose, to preserve the unrestricted authority of reason in moral philosophy. In order to do that, he did scientific use of yields the knowledge of appearance. Firstly, scientific use of reason not just scientific use of reason, and that needs to be defined. I think what Kant said was that knowledge through understanding, that's the correct term really, gives us only appearance. And even that is not a very good reading, because that only relies on what we call negative or human principle. But Kant has another principle, which is boundary principle as well, which in making or limiting understanding or knowledge through understanding cognition to appearance, also demark a whole area which is beyond cognition or understanding. So what I'm saying is, it's not as if Kant had this goal in mind, that's why he restricted it. I think his analysis of cognition and understanding how they work led to a conclusion which then restricted, which then gave moral sphere and which then gave reason unrestricted authority or moral sphere. And even that's not automatic, I think. So what I'm saying is, and our quibble here is with the the reviewer, because we don't know what the author is actually saying on this. So what he's saying is that Kant had this purpose, unrestricted use of reason, the moral sphere, as he wanted. This this is sort of a that's his purpose or goal. And since this goal, according to this reading, cannot be achieved without restricting cognition to appearances, that is, not things in themselves. So A, only if B, let's say B, that's why B. That's a sort of transcendental argument or of a sort. But what I'm saying is, it's better to read Kant. And what I'm saying is, it's more accurate to read Kant as this. He analyzes our cognition and how it works. And the result of that cognition, result of that is that cognition is restricted to appearance only. Only and not to things in themselves. In fact, it gives us the conception of things in themselves in the first place. And from this conclusion, then he could develop an argument that there's a sphere, moral sphere, which is, I guess, akin to the sphere of things in themselves, where understanding doesn't operate, and which is another way of saying that scientific reason doesn't operate, because scientific reason involves the usage of the categories of understanding. That far, that's why we can at least in principle, have a realm where there's no causality. So we can say that there's a chance of unrestricted use of reason, that is. But, and here is my second point, even if we go by this route, which is the more logical and natural way to read Kant, On its own, it just gives us the necessary condition of preserving the unrestricted authority of reason in moral sphere. Because there might be other reasons. For example, we don't have any access to things in themselves. There might be other reason through which one could argue that moral sphere doesn't have unrestricted authority of reason. So this, even this reading, gives Kant only sort of a necessary condition at most for establishing this. So this is a roundabout way of saying that, what reviewer is saying here is not that straightforward. Okay, let's move on. So Kant argued that the scientific use of reason yields knowledge of appearances only, not of things as they are in themselves. Okay, Vishtish. This trade-off sparked both consternation and controversy. So he is, and probably the book is following the book in this. He is reading Kant as if he made some sort of trade-off, wasn't an argument. Okay, I'm not saying that people haven't read Kant in this way. It seems a very odd way of reading. So this trade-off sparked both consternation and controversy. Consternation and controversy. Among Kant contemporaries, the most prominent, Fichte, who read Kant in a way in which Kant wasn't happy about, I think, said the terms for German idealism, the project of constructing a consistent rational system on the basis of Kant's Copernican turn. In the second half of the 9th century, neo-Kantian philosophers pushed back against this idealism, as did Dilthey's hermeneutics and Brentano's inspired phenomenological movement without fully escaping its pull. Underlying these development, as Anthony Bruno shows in his splendid new book, was anxiety over the fate of reason. Okay. Which reason though? The past 50 years have seen an fluorescence of studies that interpret the yield of these post-Kantian takes on science of intelligibility. And Bruno's philosophical historical reconstruction of path from Kant to Heidegger engages extensively with this literature. However, his choice of Fichte's neologism, Facticity, neologism, Facticity as fils conductor, is quite original. However, his choice of Fichte's neologism, Facticity as fil conductor, is quite original. In what sense? Guiding principle He's used the concept of facticity to organize his debate. Facticity. Facticity is not equivalent to empirical facts. Kant uses the term facts of reason, doesn't he? As expressed in proposition, facts have a rational structure. As expressed in propositions, now defining fact as in a more contemporary neologism. The facticity, in contrast, is a portmanteau for any element in a philosophical system that appears as a brute given or rationally ungrounded posit. Given. So that's his definition of facticity, not just empirical facts, but any given, which is not philosophically grounded. But then what will you say about Kant's facts of reason? Okay. Examples include Kant's rhapsodic metaphysical deduction of the categories and his undemonstrated claim that the faculty of sensible understanding are chilo distinct. That was one of his great discovery. Kant's system can't even work without this. Toto Kylo, it's not Italian, it's Latin actually. Toto Kylo. Totally, I guess. So what's he saying there? Yeah, so examples include Kant's rhapsodic metaphysical deduction of the category. So is he saying that Kant doesn't have any argument for distinguishing sensibility and understanding? So I wrote the beginning of the whole critical project of Kant sort of starts or could not have taken off without assumption or realization, without the assumption or realization that faculty of reason or understanding and sensations are discontinuous. Discontinuous. So in his pre-critical writings, Kant did adhere to continuity thesis. But once he realized discontinuity thesis, that was sort of the beginning of his critical project. So whether he grounded these in rational argument or not, you can't even imagine the Kantian project without this. distinction. And the basis for his realization that they were not continuous, were grounded in pure reason as well as practical reason, that is, in moral philosophy or moral considerations, as well as some new theory of space and time. So in a way, his theory of space and time required this distinction, or the paradoxes, or the problems he faced in his new theory of space and time. He realized that could not be solved without assuming that. So that's again an moral consideration as well, which reviewer started with. And obviously, Kant had probably more direct argument for that as well. I'm sure they were based on psychology, based on the discovery of rational psychology at the time. Examples include, okay, let's go back to now. As expressed in proposition, facts have a rational structure. Facticity, in contrast, is a portmanteau for any element in a philosophy. Portmanteau for any element in the philosophical system that appears as a root given or rationally ungrounded posit. Examples include Kant's episodic metaphysical deduction of the category. Metaphysical deduction of the categories only establishes the number of categories. He proves categories through transcendental deduction. And his distinction between sensibility and understanding is also based in transcendental deduction. Anyway, probably we should stop here and we'll continue here from here next time. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.